There are stories in Los Angeles that unfold slowly, like a whisper weaving its way through the city's glamorous surface. And then there are stories that strike like lightning, stories whose force is so sudden, so electrifying, that every life they touch is reshaped in an instant. The saga of Sheila Carter, Remy Price, Taylor Hayes, and Deacon Sharp becomes one of those lightning-struck stories, the kind that burns itself into the fabric of the bold and the beautiful with a ferocity that cannot be forgotten. For months, whispers have curled around the edges of Taylor's life, strange shadows moving beneath the surface of her seemingly calm world. And behind those shadows stood two figures, Sheila and Remy, each driven by desires that were as dangerous as they were intoxicating. Sheila Carter, legend, nightmare, survivor, has always been a creature forged in extremes. She loves with a ferocity that borders on obsession, and she destroys with a precision sharpened by decades of calculated manipulation. Her marriage to Deacon had been her most daring gamble yet, a desperate attempt to lace her chaotic life with some semblance of stability. But stability was always a borrowed coat on Sheila's shoulders, something she wore for warmth, never something she could keep. Remy Price, meanwhile, was a newer force in Los Angeles, charming, brilliant, underestimated. He understood quickly that Sheila's chaos flowed not from madness, but from strategy, and that aligning with her could elevate his own ambitions. His motivations were not rooted in love, nor loyalty, but in a hunger for influence. Sheila saw in him a weapon, polished, sharp, and ready to strike in ways she no longer could without drawing suspicion. Together, they became a storm system. Sheila, the thunder; Remy, the lightning. And Taylor Hayes, steady, compassionate, and painfully trusting, became their target. It began slowly, as all great manipulations do. A rumor here, a fabricated sighting there, subtle suggestions that Taylor's judgment was slipping or that her past traumas were resurfacing. Sheila understood the human mind with frightening clarity, especially the minds of those who have spent their lives healing others. She knew that Taylor's greatest vulnerability was the fear of becoming unstable again. All Sheila had to do was nudge, and Taylor would question herself. Remy provided the orchestration, false patient reports, staged encounters, carefully planted evidence that painted a picture of Taylor unraveling at the seams. At first, Taylor dismissed the signs. She told herself she was overtired, overthinking, or simply being paranoid. But as the weeks went on, the incidents multiplied. Files went missing from her office. Strange messages appeared on her phone. A patient she had never treated lodged a complaint claiming she had endangered them. In moments when she felt most vulnerable, she would catch a glimpse of a familiar silhouette watching her from across a parking lot or near her home, only for the figure to vanish before she could confront it. Remy executed everything with surgical precision, ensuring that Taylor isolated herself in fear. Yet the true mastermind, the puppeteer behind each string, was Sheila. She wanted Taylor gone. She needed her gone. Taylor had come too close to exposing Sheila's darkest impulses, had whispered truths to Deacon that lodged themselves in his heart like seeds waiting to bloom. Taylor represented clarity, moral, psychological, emotional clarity, and clarity was the mortal enemy of a woman like Sheila. The moment of collapse came on a night so deceptively silent that Taylor mistook it for peace. She was leaving her office late, burdened by a sense of dread she could no longer ignore. When she unlocked her car, she found her license suspended, a violation she had never committed. Minutes later, a police officer appeared, summoned by an anonymous tip, informing her that her medical certification was under emergency review for allegations of malpractice. It was the final strike, the final push. In the span of an hour, Taylor's entire career, reputation, and stability were thrust into chaos. By morning, she had left Los Angeles, fleeing not because she was guilty, but because she could no longer trust her own world. Sheila and Remy had succeeded. They had pushed Taylor out of town with the elegance of a checkmate. Yet in their triumph, they revealed something they had not accounted for. Deacon Sharp was watching. Deacon had loved Sheila with a loyalty that bordered on tragic heroism. He defended her when no one else would, believed in her when even she doubted herself, and held on to the hope that love could redeem even the darkest soul. But he was no fool. And when Taylor's sudden departure reached him, something inside Deacon shifted. The pattern of events, the accusations, the emotional unraveling, the mysterious incidents, no longer looked like coincidence. They looked like design. A design only Sheila could create. At first, Deacon approached the issue gently. He asked Sheila where she'd been on certain nights. He asked whether she had spoken to Remy recently. He asked whether she had any idea why Taylor would flee the city so abruptly. Sheila's responses came too quickly, too rehearsed. Her lies, once smooth as silk, now snagged on their own contradictions. Deacon began looking closer. He followed threads Sheila didn't realize she had dropped. He shadowed Remy. He visited Taylor's office despite Sheila's insistence that doing so would only drag him into unnecessary drama. And each thread, each clue, each inconsistency eventually wove itself into one horrifying truth. Sheila had orchestrated everything, and Remy had helped her. When Deacon confronted her, the air between them crackled like static before a storm. Sheila tried to laugh it off, accusing Taylor of fabricating stories to win his sympathy. But Deacon's eyes were no longer the eyes of a man in love. They were the eyes of a man betrayed. He demanded the truth. And Sheila, cornered by the one person she had never meant to hurt, did something she rarely did. She broke. Not into tears, but into fury. She accused Taylor of poisoning him against her. She accused Deacon of being ungrateful for her loyalty. She accused the world of conspiring to keep her from happiness. In her rage, she revealed more than she intended, confirming that she had indeed manipulated events, staged Taylor's downfall, weaponized Remy's ambition, and justified each act as necessary to protect what we have. But what struck Deacon hardest was not the confession, it was the justification. Sheila believed that destroying Taylor was an act of love, that sacrificing anyone who threatened their marriage was normal, acceptable, required. In that moment, something inside Deacon fractured beyond repair. Their confrontations spiraled out of control. Sheila begged, threatened, sobbed, and raged in a whirl of emotional violence. She insisted she did everything for him, for them. But Deacon finally saw the truth that had been hiding behind every kiss, every vow, every promise of redemption. Sheila did not know how to love without destroying. Her version of devotion was not partnership, it was possession. And he could no longer be possessed. The aftermath unfolded like a slow-motion tragedy. Word of Taylor's departure spread. Remy tried to distance himself, but Deacon exposed him publicly, pulling down the curtain on their scheme. Taylor, still shaken and far from home, learned the truth through a voice message that Deacon left, a message filled with apology, remorse, and a pain so raw it trembled through the recording. But the deepest consequences belonged to Sheila. For the first time in years, she was truly alone. Not because she had been defeated, but because the one person who had loved her despite everything finally walked away. Deacon's departure shattered her far more deeply than prison bars or public scorn ever had. She had always feared enemies, hunters, critics, but she had never feared abandonment from someone she loved. And now that fear had finally come to pass. The woman who had once terrorized Los Angeles with calculated confidence now faced the most dangerous adversary of all, herself. Meanwhile, Deacon struggled with his own emotional wreckage. Loving Sheila had been a battle between heart and conscience, and now that he had chosen conscience, his heart felt strangely hollow. He questioned whether he could ever trust his own judgment again, whether he could ever let love in without fearing the shadows it might hide. Taylor, though miles away, felt the weight of Deacon's grief as if it were her own. Their connection, fragmented, unintentional, unspoken, became a lifeline for both of them. Not romantic, but redemptive. Two souls hurt by the same storm, drawn together not by passion, but by the simple, quiet truth that healing often begins with having someone who understands your wounds. And yet, somewhere in Los Angeles, Sheila Carter's story was far from over. Pain has always been the soil in which her darkest impulses take root. Remy, though shaken, remained dangerously connected to her. And Sheila, stripped of the illusion of love, began to look at the world with new eyes, eyes hardened by loss, sharpened by fury, and fueled by the belief that if she cannot be loved, she can still be feared. The city braced itself, without knowing it. A woman betrayed is one thing. But Sheila Carter betrayed, that is a story that reshapes everything. The Bold and the Beautiful, December 16th, 2025, a day of gifts, secrets, and gathering storms. There are days in Los Angeles when the sun shines too brightly, when the glittering skyline seems to sparkle with promise, and when every street feels alive with the hum of anticipation. December 16th, 2025, begins as one of those deceptively perfect mornings, a day that seems calm on the surface, but trembles with the tension of revelations waiting to be unleashed. In the world of the bold and the beautiful, perfection is never just perfection. It is a prelude to emotional upheaval, shifting dynamics, and truths that cannot stay buried forever. This particular Tuesday promises exactly that, as the intersecting lives of the Forresters, Logans, Spencers, and Sharps begin to collide once more under the weight of new secrets, old wounds, and the unpredictable shadows cast by past mistakes. For Brooke Logan Forrester, the morning begins not with chaos, but with an afterglow, the residue of celebration from two weddings she witnessed within days of each other. Hope and Liam's union, tender and nostalgic, has barely settled in her memory before it is eclipsed by something even more unexpected: Bill Spencer and Katie Logan tying the knot once again. Brooke carries the story of this whirlwind remarriage with her as she walks back into her office, heels clicking against the marble floor like a metronome marking the shift from festivities to reality. When she sees Ridge, she feels a familiar tightening in her chest, a blend of comfort, history, and unresolved complexity. Ridge already knows about Hope's wedding, but as Brooke begins to recount the surprise ceremony between Bill and Katie, she watches Ridge's expression shift from curiosity to disbelief. Ridge has never understood Katie's draw to Bill. He has never forgiven Bill's arrogance, nor the way the man sweeps women into his orbit with a mix of danger and charm. But the news that they remarried, and so soon after Hope's wedding, sends a ripple through Ridge's composure. He tries to mask it, tries to shrug it off with a comment or a frown, yet underneath his reaction lies something more vulnerable. Ridge has always been protective of Katie, in his own way, even if their romantic history was fleeting. He worries, not about the wedding itself, but about Bill's influence, Bill's impulsiveness, and Bill's uncanny ability to make grand gestures that carry consequences no one else can predict. And as Brooke continues explaining how simple, spontaneous, and incredibly emotional the ceremony was, Ridge feels the first seeds of unease settle into him. But what truly disturbs him is not the wedding, it is the gift. Bill Spencer, a man who has built empires out of ruthlessness and charisma, is about to give Katie an entire fashion house. Not a side project, not a symbolic gesture, a full-fledged brand, born out of Bill's wealth, ambition, and desire to elevate Katie into a world she never asked to dominate. Ridge can feel the tension rise in his chest as Brooke explains it. He thinks back to all the years of battling Bill in business, in love, in pride. Giving Katie a fashion brand is not just generosity. It is strategy. It is a power play. And Ridge knows this, not because Bill said it, but because Bill does not do anything without an angle. Brooke, meanwhile, moves through her emotions with the grace of a woman who has seen marriages born and die like seasons. She is genuinely happy for her sister, happy that Katie has found stability again, but she also senses the tremor beneath the surface. She knows that gifts from Bill often come wrapped in expectations, even when he does not realize he has placed them there. Brooke has lived through the weight of those expectations before, and she fears that Katie, freshly remarried, freshly empowered, and freshly overwhelmed, may not be ready for the kind of responsibility Bill is placing into her hands. Elsewhere in Los Angeles, Katie Logan Spencer awakens with a different kind of emotion, a blend of excitement and uncertainty. She has prepared a gift for Bill, something deeply personal, something meaningful, and something that stands in contrast to Bill's over-the-top wedding present. Katie has never needed extravagance to feel loved. Her gift is quiet, thoughtful, crafted with intention rather than spectacle. It is a symbol of her commitment, not her power. She hopes Bill will see it for what it is, a reminder that marriages are not built on empire building but on the small gestures that bind two people together in vulnerability. She thinks about Will, her son, who is growing into adulthood faster than she expected. The weddings, the unions, the shifting alliances, they all mirror something deeper within him. Will has lived through the turbulence of his parents' complicated love story, and in many ways, their remarriage gives him permission to believe in his own future. His relationship with Electra Forrester has survived challenges, insecurities, and the pressures of two powerful families watching their every move. The weddings of Hope and Katie feel symbolic to him, as if love, real love, might finally be possible in his own life. It is not lost on him that he may soon follow in their footsteps, making choices that will shape his destiny. And Katie sees this. She sees the quiet determination in her son's eyes, the way he looks toward the future with a mixture of hope and sincerity. Her heart swells at the thought that he might soon take steps toward a commitment of his own. But not all hearts in Los Angeles are steady today. Some tremble on the edge of fracture. Across town, Taylor Hayes carries the weight of a conversation that refuses to leave her thoughts. She has spoken with Sheila Carter Sharp, the woman whose presence can ignite a wildfire with only a whisper. Sheila hinted at disrupting the wedding of Hope and Liam, planting the seeds of sabotage in a moment that should have been filled with love and celebration. Although she ultimately refrained, something in her voice, something in her eyes, unsettled Taylor deeply. It was not merely the threat itself, but the casualness of it. A reminder that beneath Sheila's vows of change lies a dormant volcano waiting for its next eruption. Taylor knows she must tell Deacon. She has no choice. Deacon deserves the truth, even if that truth threatens the fragile foundation of his marriage. When she finally sits across from him, her hands folded tightly, her voice steady but aching, she explains what Sheila implied. The shock on Deacon's face is immediate, but the fear is slower to emerge. At first, he wants to dismiss it. He wants to believe that Sheila has changed, that their marriage has pulled her away from the person she used to be. But as Taylor continues, he feels something inside him crack, not because he fears Sheila's danger, but because he fears losing her to her own insecurities and impulses. Deacon has fought so hard for redemption. He has clawed his way toward respectability, toward forgiveness, toward something resembling peace. But Sheila is a storm unto herself. Loving her is like loving a wildfire, beautiful, consuming, and impossible to contain. Deacon knows this, and yet he loves her with a loyalty that defies logic. Hearing Taylor's words forces him to confront a possibility he cannot bear, that Sheila may jeopardize their future, their stability, and even their safety. And worse, Sheila may believe that Taylor and Deacon share a connection deeper than mere concern. Taylor sees the turmoil in Deacon's expression, and her own heart twists with sympathy and conflict. She does not want to hurt him, but she cannot shield him from the truth. She respects Deacon's desire to stand by Sheila, yet she knows better than most that love cannot cure the kind of wounds Sheila carries. The fear that rises within her is not only fear for Deacon's marriage, but fear for what Sheila might do if she feels threatened, abandoned, or replaced. And deep down, Taylor already suspects that Sheila will soon sense something dangerous, the growing emotional closeness between Taylor and Deacon. They never intended it. It was never romantic. It was forged through shared worries, shared histories, and shared attempts to protect those they love. But emotional bonds, once formed, have a way of revealing themselves in moments of crisis. And Sheila Carter Sharp is not a woman who tolerates anything resembling betrayal, Not from her husband, and certainly not from a longtime adversary like Taylor Hayes. Meanwhile, Deacon battles a rising panic. He wants to believe in Sheila's growth. He wants to trust that she would never endanger Hope's happiness or their marriage. But the fear that Taylor awakened within him begins to poison his certainty. He begins questioning every subtle change in Sheila's behavior, every flicker of emotion in her eyes, every moment she seemed distant or overly intense in the past few weeks. And as he does, a new fear takes shape, not of losing Sheila, but of what she might do if she believes someone else is pulling him away from her. By the time the sun begins to set over Los Angeles, painting the skyline in shades of gold and crimson, the emotional landscape of the city is far more tumultuous than the morning's serenity suggested. Brooke worries for Ridge's reaction. Ridge worries about Bill's influence. Katie anticipates giving her meaningful gift to her husband, but wonders whether she can carry the empire Bill is handing her. Will reimagines his future with hope and trembling certainty. Taylor fears the storm Sheila may unleash. And Deacon, torn between love and fear, looks toward the future with the uneasiness of a man who senses that everything he holds dear is slipping toward the edge. Sheila Carter Sharp, however, sits in the shadows of a dimly lit room, replaying her conversation with Taylor, feeling the sting of judgment, the threat of interference. She senses the shift. She senses the whisper of doubt in Deacon's voice. And in her world, doubt is the enemy. Doubt is betrayal. Doubt is the spark that ignites the fire she tries so hard to suppress. As the day closes, the question lingers like thick perfume in the air. Which storyline will ignite first when Tuesday, December 16th, 2025, arrives? Will it be the fallout from Katie's mysterious gift to Bill? Will Ridge's anger at Bill explode as the truth of the fashion house emerges? Will Will and Elektra step closer to a future they have quietly built together? Or will the most dangerous flame of all, Sheila's jealousy and suspicion, rise to consume everything around her? Whatever unfolds, one truth is clear. In the bold and the beautiful, even a day that begins with gifts can end with catastrophe waiting to bloom beneath the surface.